They bullied the new KFC employee and made him clean toilets, not knowing he was Colonel Sanders' grandson. The lunch rush had the building rattling as if the fryers themselves were beating out a drumline. Heat pressed out of the kitchen in waves that smelled of oil and pepper, biscuits and steam. The headset chattered with orders, a voice reading combos, while the next car rolled up and the line behind snaked past the menu board and out toward the street. The floor glistened with a slick of soda and tracked-in rain. A light buzzed above the drink station, a tired insect caught in a plastic cage. Into that churn walked a quiet young man with his cap still stiff from the bag. He tucked his hair under the brim, eyes steady, shoulders narrow and squared like someone who had practiced looking brave in the mirror. He said little at the time clock, just gave the form and took the shirt, changed in the break room beside a sagging couch and a poster about hand-washing. The label printer had hiccuped as they made his badge, letters coming out light and then dark. Someone slapped clear tape over the top to keep it from peeling. The tape caught a corner, skewed the last line. The badge showed a starter first name and a single letter for his last, the right edge swallowed by a crease. The shift lead glanced at him, at the rush, at the list that lived only in his head. "We will see what you are made of," he said, already turning away to shout for more original recipe in the next drop. The line cooks smirked like a choir. "There is always one," their eyes said. "There is always someone new who looks too polite for the place." The first job was the floor. The young man took the mop without a sound, filled the bucket, checked the angle of the yellow sign, and put it where people could not pretend they had not seen it. He worked in long, patient strokes that pushed grime to the edges, and then corralled it, rinsed often, wrung with both hands. Customers in damp jackets sidestepped him with trays loaded with salt and soda and paper cradles, and a child tracked a comet tail of mashed potatoes right through the rectangle he had just made glow. He smiled at the child and redrew the missing shape without a hint of speed. When the headset squealed for more thighs, the lead grunted for someone to haul from the walk-in. The new hire was there first. The cooler breathed cold on his face, a relief that felt like kindness. He lifted boxes from the bottom without banging the corners, stacked them so the older ones came forward, read the little stamped times without moving his lips. The plastic slapped his forearms as he carried the weight out and set it exactly where the breader liked it, not blocking the flour bin. Behind him, the staff joked about how long he would last. A cashier said she had a bet he would not see the end of dinner. Someone else snorted and said lunch would chew him up. He was called to the fryers next. The crumb trays had caked with the snow that fell from each basket, and the oil ran cloudy toward the filter line. A hand pointed without joy. "See if you can make that pit stop, while we all breathe." He said okay, and fished out the little hooked tool tucked behind the warming station. He cracked the trays from their brackets, tapping gently, so nothing splashed. He skimmed with easy motions, the way someone skims a pond for leaves, steady, not chasing each piece but collecting them in a tidy drift. He watched the oil gather clarity, the way a window does when a storm ends and the water slides down. The restroom bell chimed on the tablet, a customer report ping that said the facilities could use attention. Heads turned and then turned away. The lead looked at the new hire, then at the headset, then back at the new hire. "We will see what you are made of," he said again, almost a joke now because no one had the hands to spare. The young man nodded and took the caddy. The lock clicked beneath his fingers. Inside, it smelled like every fast food restroom smells in the middle of a rush, like bleach hanging on for dear life and losing. He set the sign, propped the door, and began with the high parts first, the mirror with its fog of spots, the sink with its ring. He scrubbed behind the metal, wiped the edges, picked up the stray napkin and the balled paper that had missed the bin. He took his time on the toilet, not slow, not fast, just thorough, with a respect that felt almost old-fashioned. He washed his own hands longer than the poster suggested. When he came out, the lead gave a short whistle that might have been approval and might have been a surprise at the visible shine. Back in the kitchen, the chaos had not paused to notice anything. A tray clattered. The printer ticked out tickets like a rattlesnake in the wall. A customer at the counter asked for extra pickles and then asked again, louder, as if volume could bend reality. A cook swore under his breath, about corporate, about quotas, about life. The new hire stepped past him, lifted a basket with a towel so he would not burn his wrist, shook off the oil with a practiced economy that made one of the older workers blink. "Where did you learn that?" The older one started to ask, then remembered it did not matter here. A bell chimed and everyone reached for a piece of the call-out. New peels, wipe the line, refill the slaw, sweep under the bins. The simplest things were the ones that saved the day when the storm came. They sent him to the dumpster next, because that was what you did with the new ones during the swell. The bags were heavy and wet at the bottom. He tied them tight and hugged them to his body so they would not bleed on the floor, walked the long side path past the grease trap, and did not complain when a car splashed his shoes with water from a puddle the size of a small pond. He came back whistling under his breath, a tune without words. One of the cashiers rolled her eyes, but she did it smiling. In snatches, when he thought no one was looking, his eyes traveled over the posted charts like he was studying a family photo. He traced the timeline of drops, the rotation of pans, the little reminders about how the biscuit dough liked to be handled cold. He took the time to align the tongs so the handles faced the same way. He straightened the sugar packets. He slid a damp cloth under the soda nozzles and took away the stickiness no one else had noticed in days. The tape on his badge lifted at the corner as the heat worked on it. A piece of flour stuck there and would not let go. The letters beneath were sharp in some places and blurred in others. A cashier pointed to it and said, "You need a new one of those." He glanced down, thumbed the edge, and laughed softly. "It will do fine," he said. The badge bore a small first name and a single initial for his last, the finish smudged where the tape had chewed the tail. No one read it twice. No one thought about what that letter might stand for. By late in the rush, the crew had stopped testing him and had started using him. He had that effect. He absorbed what was asked and did the next thing without waiting. When the lead barked for a sweep appeared. When the sink filled, his hands were in the water. When the window needed a smile, he wore one that felt natural, not pinned on like the name tag. The older cook who had blinked earlier watched the way the new hire pressed a biscuit with 2 fingers to test for done, the way his shoulders settled before moving a stack, the way he said yes to each ugly job as if the job itself had a dignity that did not depend on who pointed. A lull arrived the way lulls do, unannounced and already over. The line shortened. The headset quieted. Someone, finally, took a breath. The lead leaned against the stainless and studied the young man for half a heartbeat, eyes traveling from the shoes still damp from the puddle to the careful hands to the badge with its taped corner. "Nice work," the lead said, and it came out surprised. The young man nodded like he was grateful to have been allowed to do good work. He turned the mop back to its corner, wrapped the cord without tangles, and straightened the caution sign so the cartoon figure was facing outward. Above the break room couch, the poster about hand-washing curled at the edges. The clock ticked on. Heat shimmered. Through it all, the badge caught a shard of light. The tape hid the far side of his last name. It hid more than that, too, but that was for someone else to notice on another day, after the kind of job no one volunteers for, and the kind of patience that people either have or they do not. For the moment, there was still a floor to dry, and a bucket to empty and a fryer to watch, and the quiet young man moved back into the current like he had always been part of it. The new hire learned quickly that around here grease had gravity. It pulled everything toward it. The first time they sent him to the trap, the lid groaned like a stubborn door, and the smell rose up in a hot wave, sweet and sour and old as a broken promise. He tied his apron higher and said, "Yes, ma'am," to the shift lead who handed him a scraper like a judge passing down sentence, and he went to his knees without complaint. His breath fogged his glasses. His gloves slid. A joke drifted from the line, something about a farm boy who came to town to kiss the friar, and Snickers fluttered like discarded napkins. He had been raised to say, "Yes, sir," and "Yes, ma'am," without thinking, raised to put his shoulders into whatever was in front of him, even if what was in front of him was a slurry of fat and onion skins and a smell that stuck in the nose. He scraped in a steady rhythm, thoughtful, almost careful, and when the pit was as clean as it would get for the day, he sealed the lid and wiped the hinge, because hinges mattered. Someone noticed the extra pass with the rag and snorted. His sleeves were too crisp. The way he folded his towel was too precise. The cashier with the glittered nails called him a little soldier, like it was an insult. He smiled anyway, said, "Yes, ma'am," when she told him to haul the bags out to the dumpster. Dumpster duty came with gulls that lounged like customers nobody could tell to leave. The wind snatched the sour breath of the bins and flung it back in his face. A bag split at his shoes and slick gravy tears slithered toward the drain. He pinned the leak with calm hands, double-knotted, then picked up the runaway cups because his grandfather had always said that a single cup on the ground made people think no one cared. He did not say that out loud. He just did it. Inside, the lunch line grew, a row of rumpled coats and rumbling stomachs, and the fryer hummed like a beast being soothed. He set a gentle timer for the next drop of chicken, not because anyone told him to, but because he could feel the lull before the rush. He wiped the menu boards with a cloth dipped in warm water and vinegar, until the smudges were gone, and the light caught on clean plastic. Someone observed him and cracked, "Hey, you plan to polish the straws next?" He said, "Yes, sir, if you want." Another round of laughter. He smiled like he meant it. The worst of the razzing came at the registers. When he greeted a grey-haired man with "sir," the teenager bagging sides rolled eyes so dramatically, it was a miracle they ever returned to normal. When he thanked a woman with "ma'am," the grill cracked that it was not the army. No one here was a general. He wanted to explain that respect cost nothing and paid for itself, but explanations only make you look eager, and eagerness makes you a target. He kept his voice low and even, the kind of voice a person could set a watch by. Between orders, a small boy pressed his hands to the glass, as if the warming case were a museum exhibit. The boy had been here before, a backpack with a stitched name that the new hire had noticed because noticing was a habit. He crouched to the child's height and said, "Welcome back," and spoke the name softly. The boy's face lit like the heat lamps had turned to real sunshine. The mother blinked, surprised, shoulders dropping a notch. The crew teased later that he was trying to win tips with sugar, but the line moved easier for a few moments after that, like kindness had greased the floor. The toilets clogged mid-afternoon. It is a rule of the world that toilets always clog when the line is longest, and the manager is counting drawers in the back, and no one wants to claim the plunger. The new hire took it without hesitation. He kept his shirt collar up out of the splash and his mind somewhere quiet. There was a trick to it that he had learned in places where manners are served with breakfast. You coax the water rather than fight it. You give it a path. He never minded the work itself. What bothered him was the way the others stood in the doorway and watched like he was there for entertainment, like the clean floors and the tidy lids and the wiped-down sill above the sink were some kind of performance. He flushed victory, washed his hands till his skin stung, and returned to the line with a nod that said, "All set." He could feel how the day would go by the way the flour drifted across the prep table. The breading bowls were out of order, the trays stacked in a way that made hands cross and movements bump. It had been like that since his first shift, and he had been moving around the inefficiency like a dancer keeps tempo in a crowded room. Finally, while the line thinned for a breath, he pointed gently. "What if we stage the trays so that the wet hand moves left to right," he suggested, "and keep the tongs where both sides can reach, and make the biscuits earlier so the oven is free when people start asking for extra." It would cut weight, he promised, the way a clean knife glides through a tomato instead of crushing it. The shift lead laughed the way a person laughs when they hear a joke only they get. "This, the kid who says sir to the soda machine telling us how to work?" Someone else chimed in with a memory of every other new person who came in and tried to fix things. The grill wagged a greasy spatula like a conductor. "We got our rhythm," they said. "Keep your timer, and your polished letters, and your sweet little greetings. You want to help, take out the cardboard, and break it down." It was not an invitation. He did what they asked. Outside, the wind had turned, crisp and sharp. He hefted the flattened boxes, slid his knife through tape that had been mummified by sauce spills, and made the stack neat. He thought of mornings long ago, hands twice as big over his small fingers, teaching him how to pull a blade safely, how to work without hurry and without slack. He thought of a white suit hung on the hook of memory, a smell of pepper and flour in an old pantry, a voice that told him that a sandwich wrapped straight is a kind of handshake. He thought of the promise that each piece of chicken should crackle and steam and not sag and apologize. The dinner wave washed in with the particular thunder of people who are late and hungry. The line swelled and bent. The fryer hissed in complaint. Orders piled. The shift lead barked and the crew tried to match the tempo, but it was like trying to dance to a song you do not know. The new hire kept his station calm. When the timer he had set earlier chimed its modest little song, He looked up and met the eyes of the person on fries. "Fresh drop," he said, already moving. He lifted with firm hands, warm pieces steaming, and for a brief run of tickets the line moved smoother. People smiled when they bit. The cashier with glitter nails, surprised, called out that it tasted like the commercials promised. He did not turn for the compliment. He kept working. When the clog returned, as clogs always do, he was there with the plunger again. When the menu boards gathered fingerprints of sauce and impatience, he swiped them clean without announcement. When a child started fussing, he leaned over the counter and offered a packet of honey and a gentler voice. He set another quiet timer, and another, not because he had authority, but because he had standards. He swept under the edge of the counter, where people forgot to sweep. He straightened the lids not because anyone would notice, but because he would. Someone at the end of the night called him a joke for the way he lined up the mop bucket and parked it facing out, said he was stiff enough to be a coat rack. He smiled at that, a real smile, because it meant they were watching. He was not here to win them over in a day. He was here to keep faith with work that had shaped him long before he walked through this door. He folded his apron, washed his hands a final time, and before he left he checked the grease trap lid with a tiny press of his fingers. The hinge held. Small things first. Tomorrow would be another chance to do them right. Grease hissed from the fryers and the printer coughed a ribbon of tickets that puddled against the register. The lunch rush pushed through the doors like a wave and scattered everyone behind the counter. A catering slip for a mountain of chicken had been queued earlier, then buried by walk-ins and app pings. The heat lamps were full of everything except what the big order demanded. Voices rose. A customer at the front drummed fingers on the counter and started in about how long it had been, how they had a break window and it was closing fast. Near the napkin dispensers, an elderly regular waited with a patient half-smile, the kind that tried to forgive the oversight even as it stung. The rookie could feel the tilt of the place, the way a fast food kitchen can shift from rhythm to mess, from dance to stagger. He had been in the back not long before, scrubbing baseboards and railing the restroom's sink until the scent of bleach lived in his knuckles. That assignment had not been a kindness. Even now, someone from Grill snickered about how clean the toilets must be. He let the jab pass the way you let steam vent, a soft sound on its way to gone. Another ticket printed, and the shift lead slung a headset off, jaw tight. The rookie stepped toward the pass, not grabbing control, only offering a handle. "What do you need?" he said, and the lead met his eyes, saw something steady, then nodded. "Announce the big ticket," the lead said. "Keep it moving." He raised his voice just enough to carry, without cutting. "Catering order for the office call-in is in progress," he told the room. "Walk-ins, we are getting your food as fast as the fryers allow. Thank you for your patience." He spoke like a host, not a traffic cop, and bodies seemed to align on an invisible line. He shifted the pickup area to the left, pointed arriving guests toward a small pause point, asked the paper baggers to match receipt names aloud before sealing. He glanced at the complaining customer and stepped directly to them. "You were here for a break," he said. "I hear you. With the lead's approval, we are adding a side for the wait." He looked to the lead to make sure the words were true, and got a short nod. "Corn or mashed?" he asked, warmth in the choice. The knot in the customer's shoulders loosened. "Mashed," came the answer. He plated it himself and set the small tub by the register, printed a comp, and smiled as he slid the receipt across. The fryer chirped and he called for fresh dark meat. He moved chicken like cards, quick and careful. Baggers called back what they needed. Someone on sandwiches began stacking buns under a warm dome to keep them soft. The rookie kept the air clear. He repeated what mattered. Not too often. Just enough to soothe. "Fresh batch coming for the catering ticket. Spicy works in a moment. Thank you for hanging with us." He made sure that thank you went outward to the room, not down the line. As orders left the pass, he stepped around the front to the elderly regular. The man's hat brim trembled a little when he tried to raise it. "Did anyone take care of you yet?" the rookie asked. The regular smiled, the let me be no trouble smile. He guided him gently to the side so he would not be jostled. "Tell me what you like," he said. The same as always came out in a whisper, "Original, extra gravy if you can, a biscuit that is not too dry." He repeated it, letting the regular hear the care in the words. He took the ticket himself to the back, felt the heat of the lamps on his brow. checked each piece by hand. He swapped a dull piece for one with a brighter crackle, split open a biscuit to check steam, brushed the top with butter, tucked in honey and napkins, then carried the tray to a quiet corner. He filled a small cup of water with ice and set it down with both hands as if it were fine china. "Thank you," the regular said, and the rookie felt something settle inside him. As neat as the lid on a box. The noise of complaint in the room softened. The big order, at last, congealed into a row of bags, left in the arms of a grateful driver. The printer calmed. The register beeped more politely. Outside, a delivery truck sighed away from the curb. That was when the franchise owner came in, unannounced, stride crisp, eyes taking inventory without a clipboard. The lead straightened. A manager who had been gossiping about the toilet cleaner turned to busy work with sudden interest. The owner watched the rookie talk to a mother about a kid's meal toy, and then pivot to wipe a drip of gravy from the counter, watched him slide a bag to a guest, and make eye contact long enough to tether gratitude to the exchange. The owner did not say hello right away. There was a small pause in the doorway, where the light from the street framed a face, and in that pause the owner glanced up at the portrait that hung over the dining room. The smiling gentleman in glasses looked down from a life of recipes and road miles and hospitality, and the owner's gaze traveled back from that image to the young worker who, in a certain tilt of the head and the set of the mouth, carried a family echo. The resemblance landed like a quiet question. The owner's brow rose, just a fraction. Rush ebbing, the lead lifted a hand toward the owner in a half wave, half salute. "Nice recovery," the owner said at last, voice even. The rookie nodded without fishing for praise. "Thank you," he replied, and returned to stacking boxes with the care of a house builder setting shingles. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He stepped behind the soda tower, out of guest view, and checked the screen. A text from his aunt glowed over the lock image. "Proud of you. Grandpa would be, too." He felt the sting of it, like bright cold on a winter morning, refreshing and bracing at once. He locked the phone, slid it back into his pocket, and breathed in the layered scent of pepper and flour and hot oil that had perfumed his childhood in ways he had learned not to advertise. Out in the dining room, the regular took a slow bite of biscuit and closed his eyes in contentment. Near the door, the owner looked from portrait to worker, from worker to portrait, and whatever the thought was, it stayed behind his teeth. The rookie returned to the counter. The room had found its music again. The cracks in their bucket had not vanished, but they were patched for the moment with something better than tape, something like care, and even the ones who had sent him to scrub grout could not quite ignore that the kid they mocked had just kept the place from tipping over. The new hire was still damp to the elbows from the restroom sink when the owner touched his sleeve and steered him toward the office. The door clicked, a small sound under the hum of the walk-in. Fryers crackled somewhere down the hall. He stood there, in his stained apron, unsure whether to fold his hands or keep them at his sides, grease darkening the cotton. The owner's face held a look he had not yet seen in this store, a mix of worry and curiosity that pierced through the usual rush of orders and shortages and schedules. "You came here on purpose," the owner said quietly. "Not for the paycheck." The new hire held his breath for a heartbeat, and then nodded. "I applied to see what it was really like. From the ground up. To learn, and to watch how the place runs, when no one is looking. I wanted the truth." The owner's eyes flicked across the name tag he had been given that first day, then up to the cap with the red logo, then back to his face. The room felt suddenly smaller, the metal desk too bright. Wordless recognition moved across the owner's features, like a picture coming into focus. The new hire did not enjoy it. There was no triumph in the moment, only the steady ache of a long week and the memory of a toilet brush biting the knuckle of his thumb. "Your grandfather," the owner said, voice dropping to a whisper, as if the walls could carry gossip. "The one who started all this. Is that true?" "It is," the new hire said. "He taught me that, if you want to fix something, first you watch. You let people show you who they are when they do not know you are watching." The owner leaned back, stunned and a little winded. The air conditioner rattled, like a troubled motor. The new hire could not help the small smile that tugged at the edges of his mouth, not a smile of gloating but of relief that the lid was finally off the pot. The office door opened, and the world outside reached in. A whisper left one mouth and arrived in another. In the kitchen the tempo shifted. Hands still moved, but eyes lifted. The breading table went quiet. Even the headset chatter thinned. The shift lead, who had tossed a rag at him earlier and called him the Mop King, folded their arms, chin raised like a shield. "He is saying he came here pretending," the shift lead said, loud enough to cross the tiles, "that he is somebody else. Is that supposed to make us feel bad for making him do the dirtiest job? Everybody cleans the toilets. Everybody starts somewhere." The new hire stepped out of the office before the owner could stop him. The dining room had that midday lull where sunlight becomes a layer of syrup over plastic seats. He stood where everyone could see him, but his gaze never sharpened. He had no interest in skewering anyone with it. "You are right," he said, steady and clear. "Everyone cleans the toilets. I did too when I was a kid visiting my grandfather's place. And again this week. I asked for it. But there is a difference between teaching and testing and bullying and slicing pride. The difference is respect. I came in to see how this store treats each other and the guests. I wanted to understand where the cracks are." The shift lead's mouth thinned, cheeks flushed with heat that did not come from the fryers. The eyes of the crew dipped from the new hire to the floor, then to the clock, and back. The owner stepped to his side, not quite shoulder to shoulder. There was a solemn weight in the way he held his clipboard now, like a promise he had not signed yet. "What do you want me to do?" the owner asked. "Tell me what happens next. If I have been missing something, I need to hear it. If someone owes an apology, say it. If someone owes discipline, say that too." The new hire shook his head. "No punishments," he said. "That is not what this island I want to reset. Standards, not fear. The way the founder wrote them down is not a secret. Season, cook, hold, serve with pride, and treat people better than they expect. We retrain together. Not just talking. Show and do. We set precise habits so the chicken is right, and the floor stays safe and the voices stay kind. We start right now, if you will stand in front with me." Silence sat on the room for a moment. Then the owner took a breath that seemed to open something in his chest. "I agree," the owner said, "on one condition. Everybody shows up with respect, starting now. That means no eye rolls when someone asks for help. No shortcuts that put others in a bind. No sneers behind the walk-in door. Respect for stations, for each other, for the guests, and for the work. We will earn our pride back together." The shift lead swallowed. The arms unfolded. When the words came, they were smaller and truer. "I did not treat you right," the shift lead said. "I thought you were slow. I thought you were trying to coast. I made you clean the worst of it, because I could. That is on me. I am sorry." The new hire nodded, grateful, but not triumphant. Then he tied his apron tighter and moved to the sink. He pulled the thermometer from the drawer and showed how to calibrate against ice water without bending the stem. He dumped aging flour and built fresh breading with measured gesture and careful hands, letting the seasoning fall like a quiet rain. He washed the tongs and labeled them, then set them in their places like instruments before a concert. He called out orders with a cadence that steadied nerves instead of spiking them. When a guest asked for extra napkins, he delivered them with a smile that reached the eyes. Soon the crew pushed closer. Questions spilled. Why this order of steps? Why this rest time on the rack? Why this many shakes to let excess drop? He answered without scolding, and when he did not know, he said so and made a note to check. The shift lead watched, then moved alongside him, hands mirroring his. The owner hung a new list on the wall, not as a threat, but as a shared promise in simple words that anyone could follow. Word would travel beyond the store, he knew. That was fine. Stories have their own legs. What mattered most was the feeling inside these walls. The fryer still sang, the ice machine still coughed, the register still beeped its little song. But there was another sound now, quiet and rare. It was the sound of people choosing to be better in front of each other. It was the sound of respect, starting now. The first morning of the tune-up began before the neon sign blinked awake. The new hire set a bucket of hot sanitizer on the stainless table and spread a stack of clean towels like cards, quiet and quick. The fryer still slept. The ovens ticked as they warmed. He did not grandstand or bark orders. He just started, and people drifted to him, curious to see what he was doing. He showed the opener how to watch the timer without watching it. "Feel the rhythm," he said. eyes on the color of the crust, listening for the soft chirp that meant pull now, not later. Proper hold times, he explained. Keep food delicious and keep guests safe. A rack of fresh chicken cooled on a wire shelf, steam lifting in curls. He lifted one piece, turned it, let the light hit it just so, then set it back. The cook beside him nodded and reset the timers with a steadier hand. He laid out uniforms on the break table, crisp as folded flags, hats not crushed, aprons without stains, name tags straight and clean. He ironed his own shirt with slow patience in the back office, while the ice machine hummed. When the door opened and the closers stumbled in, he handed out lint rollers and offered a grin. Not to scold, but to set the tone. Someone cracked a joke about a fashion show, and the room shook loose with a laugh, but they rolled their sleeves at their wrists and checked each other's collars all the same. At the front counter, he stood with the youngest cashier and rehearsed the words that make people feel seen. Yes, please, thank you, welcome in. So glad you came. May I get that fresh for you? He said it until it felt like breathing. He matched her pace and mirrored her smile. A few customers that day did not seem to notice, but the ones who did softened right away, like a warm biscuit when you press it with your thumb. Cleaning as you go was the next melody. A drip under the sauce rail never became a puddle. A smear on the sneeze guard never turned into a streak. He taught them the habit of wiping in circles, not back and forth, so the shine did not break. He showed them how to stash rags in a way that kept clean separate from dirty, hot from cold, quick from slow. Someone spilled flour, an old enemy that this place knew too well, and instead of shouting or pointing, he dropped to a knee with the broom and began. The shift lead, who used to bark at everyone, looked at him for a breath, and then knelt too. He had been the boy they made scrub the toilets as a prank on his first week, but he had never said a bitter word. Now that mattered. He knew how the floor felt against your knees when you knew people were laughing in the walk-in. He knew how a person could be made smaller than a mop head. He did not make speeches about it. He simply put respect in the bucket with the sanitizer and let it be passed around. The apology came in pieces. The one who used to flick flour on his back cleared their throat and said, "I was wrong." Another said, "I did not know who you were." He dipped his chin and said, "You do not need to know who I am to treat me right." Then he smiled to make the edge soft. He accepted, not like a judge, but like a teammate. And then he set them up for success. The loud one became the voice of drive-through, coached to use warmth like a spotlight. The most impatient became the guardian of hold times, timer in hand, learning patience as a craft. The one whose jokes had cut turned out to be perfect in the dining room, reading tables like a map, refilling cups before anyone asked. The quietest got the end of night close, a ritual now lit with small candles of pride. Small wins became a currency. The first time a tray left the pass with everything hot at once, he snapped his fingers, and the whole line grinned. When a regular couple took a booth and left a note on a napkin, "Thank you for the smiles," he taped it to the office door where everyone could see. The next day, a family with a stroller came in, and the cashier remembered extra napkins without being asked. An older man in a tartan cap pointed at the fresh chicken and said, "Looks like it used to." The one who used to roll their eyes quietly pumped a fist under the counter. He taught them to tag in across stations. "If you see someone drowning, jump beside them," he said. A hand on fries could be a hand on the register. The next minute, and nobody owned a corner. That day, the lunch rush hit harder than usual, but nobody got swallowed. They were a rowboat, not a dock. They moved together. By the end of the week, the posted report in the office had more green lines than red. The district visit that used to feel like a dentist appointment turned into a quick walk, some questions, a smile that did not seem forced. The dining room filled with voices, not complaints. The headset at the drive-thru chirped with thank yous that sounded like they meant it. Even the air smelled different, less like burnt oil and more like something you wanted to bring home. That afternoon, a few regulars noticed the change and said so out loud. The teenager who used to come in for a cup of ice leaned on the counter and said, "You all are nicer now." When the evening shift gathered for a break, someone suggested a photo. They chose the wall in the lobby where the portrait hangs, the one with the gentleman in the white suit, chin tipped up, glasses glinting, smile like a porch light. They stood beneath him, shoulder to shoulder, hairnets and hats, and name tags askew in the way that proves you were working. The new hire did not take the middle. He slid one step to the side. An arm crossed his body, the same way it crosses in the portrait above. His smile curved at the same angle. For a second, there were two of the same posture in the same frame, one in paint and one in cotton and flour, and the team saw it. Someone laughed and covered their mouth. Someone else whispered, "I knew it." The camera clicked. No speech followed. They went back to the line. Orders came, trays went out, sauce cups clicked into place, timers chimed, rags flashed across steel. The apology turned into action. The uniform stayed crisp. The words, "Yes, please," and "Thank you," built a bridge that people began to cross. The new recipe did not go on the menu board. It went into the hands that held tongs, into the eyes that met eyes at the counter, into the way a broom leaned ready near the soda machine. It was simple, and hard, and worth it. In any kitchen, or any job, character is the secret ingredient. Treat every person like they belong, because they might be the one who changes everything.